like a posterity. Okay, so you know us, Becky, with Blackboard support, and Philip, Director of E-Learning Systems. So I bet you didn't know, and these are some odd bits and pieces in Blackboard that people don't even know are there, or they don't think about, or they haven't come across yet. A couple of them, when you do, they're kind of a big deal. So we're just going to look at those. And most of this is just going to be screen sharing. So here's your virtual cookies. Like I said, if you send me your address, I will mail you a cookie. I don't guarantee the condition of the cookie on receipt. So, okay, we're going to look at student view. Have you used the student view tool much at all? Okay, it's a great tool, and we'll just kind of cover it because it's fantastic, and I want everybody to use it all the time because it's awesome. We'll look at some discussions, specifically some options for students and the way students can discussions, because there's about 15 million different ways you can actually look at discussions, and most people just go straight forward into the threads. But there's a couple of other little weird things that are good to know about. Grade Center color coding. Have you used the color coding in Grade Center? Okay, we'll take a look at that. A lot of instructors really like it once they start using it. Yeah, it kind of stands out. Like at first, it's kind of hard to get used to. It bothers me, like too much color. But then the calendar, which is important because it works with the due dates, which are going to become important. And we'll look at consistency, especially using a calendar, because if students come to rely on the calendar, we want that to be consistent. And then HotSpot questions on tests, because I think more people should use them. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to clear my screen. Well, not the application, but okay. Oh, I was just looking at some. Okay. So I'll keep checking back and forth on the chat in case you should add some, but otherwise I've got the just a second. You see that? The audio setup wizard?
Okay.
Okay, well, let's go there. Okay, so we're going to look at the student view under course tools, and it's always enabled. Student view takes you right in, your name is gone, you're replaced with a demo user. This is exactly what students see. A lot of instructors will use the edit mode off. That doesn't give you exactly what students see. This logs you out and logs you in as a student, so you're seeing the course as a student would see it. The drawback there is when you're getting ready before the start of the semester, because students who are enrolled in your class can't access it yet, the student view tool doesn't work. So it's not really great until that first live day. Fortunately, that's before the official start of the semester now, so you've got a couple of days to kind of check things out. It's really great for when students are saying they don't see something that you do see. And a lot of times that's because there's a link to an item and the item's hidden and the link isn't, or vice versa. And the grades area looks very, very different for students than it does for us as instructors. So it's really great to check that out and say, okay, what does my feedback look like to you? You know, where does it show up on your grade screen, and how do your grades appear? I'm going to go ahead and go back to teacher view. Logs me back in. That's student view. It's fantastic, and I think people should use it all the time.
One of the things that I do too, and Crystal, you may have done this, is that submitting an assignment, you can submit an assignment as a student if you'd like to see how it comes in. So sometimes when students are saying that they submitted their work and they can't see it on their screen, a lot of times I go into student view and submit something, and just to see if the inline grading tool is working and that things are functioning properly. So I use it a lot for troubleshooting, but also use it for when I'm changing course design, or make sure I don't have some of those assignments hidden that are actually appearing to students in the Grade Center. So that's what I use it for, is just kind of check prior to the start of the semester to see layout, but I also use it to troubleshoot. So
yeah, it's great for troubleshooting. If I don't see something wrong and an instructor or a student calls and they're like, I don't see this, or there's an issue with this, and I can't see it, I'll go straight into student view mode and just check, okay.
yeah, it's much better than us having to enroll the dummy student as we did previously. So yeah, it's great to click in and click out. Once you click in the first time, that demo student will stay in your course, and that student can be removed easily. But if you don't want it to appear in your roster, but otherwise he or she will stay there.
It.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to look at a couple of discussion options now. Have you used the subscribe function before? Okay, good. Do you use subscribe to the forum or subscribe to threads at the thread level? Yeah, it's great. The subscribe to threads is great for the question and answer forum because then you have that alert every time someone posts in there, and you want to know every single time someone posts in there. Now for students, for the weekly discussion forums, the subscribe to threads is actually a little more practical for students with the include body of post in the email, because students don't want to subscribe to the entire thread and get an email every time someone posts. That doesn't really give them a lot of information. They can just go into the forum and see that more people have posted. But if they are subscribing to individual threads, like their own threads, so that they get a notification every time someone posts to their thread, or if they subscribe to threads that they've responded to, because they're not going to respond to everybody in the class, but they can see when somebody's responded back to them. And including the post in the body of the post in the email is really helpful, because if it's just a link, then they know that someone has posted, but they don't know whether it's worth their time to go in and check it or to think about it and post when they do have time to go in. They don't know if it's just oh, that's a good point, or I really liked your post. Those sort of things, if they get that in the email, they know they don't have to worry about that. But if they get a post body that is really interesting or brings new information in, which is what we're hoping for from discussions, then you want them to be able to see that, because that encourages them to start thinking about it and either jump in right then to continue the discussion or to think about it until they do have time to get in there and make a significant post. So that's a great option for students for discussions. Now another thing about discussions that a lot of people don't realize is there's a lot of different ways to view, and this is not a great example course. Let me get to a different example course. I don't have any posts in it. So if you're in discussions, and you may have used clicking on the unread post, but a lot of people don't realize you can click there and just see the post that you haven't read yet and sort of get just a bunch of posts. And that's a good way for instructors, because you're not necessarily going to respond to every single student, and you don't want to have to sift through the normal view of the discussion where all the threads are and the ones that you have replied to, the ones that you have read. This sort of gives you just the rundown of what's new, and that's a view that's available to instructors and students. So that's really helpful for instructors a lot of times when they're grading, because you can reply right there, and you know which students have participated a lot and which student participation is new. Let me go back to, and that's a lot. It's more of a summary screen than going through all of these. Now another thing that students have a lot of trouble with is creating a thread and then saving it as a draft, and the saved draft, then they can't find their post later, or they don't know why it didn't submit. And for students, let me real quick. and discussions. And if they go into a forum, they may be only seeing, or they might have their view set to draft only, and they can see it and they can't figure out why the instructor's telling them they haven't submitted, because they're looking at only their draft and they see it, but nobody else does because of the draft. So when students are reporting that they see or don't see a post, or that they see it and no one else sees it, this is the first place we tell them to go, is to display show all. So that's sort of a functionality that can cause problems that not everybody really knows about. We do have a video for students about subscribing that we put in the first time online student orientation course that Bill made. So it does sort of show students how to subscribe to a thread or a forum. But
yeah, we can just send that to Chris.
Yeah, we can send that over too. And but it's not going to work unless the instructor is enable the subscribe to the feature. So so it's kind of a hard deal.
That's kind of the tricky thing. I tell all my students in my class that I have the subscriptions turned on, but we have a lot of instructors that don't know that feature is available. So I'll tell them how to use it, and then they'll go to their other course and be frustrated with the instructor because it's not turned on. So I like to use it in my course, and I think my students like it. So I encourage you to use it. But we'll get you a link to that video.
Yeah, see, now it's a big part of my on default session that was scheduled for earlier today, because most people don't think about it. I mean, you just kind of go through and you turn it on, you put the grades in, and you don't really think about it. But it does have a big impact on the student experience in the discussion boards, and it can really contribute to having them actually have a good discussion and make significant posts, and to continue the discussion even after they've met the requirements for the week. So it's a very big benefit to the course. So, okay. Do you have any questions about Discussion Center stuff, or anything that you've noticed that has been janky or caused problems or helped you? Yeah, and if you're following a particular student, like a student who has a post, maybe it's a good post, and you've exchanged with the student, you want to have that notification, telling you what they said next. Or if you're kind of keeping an eye on a student who's maybe veering off the tracks a little bit, you get those notifications and you can monitor that situation, especially if you have sort of the antagonism between two students. You can keep an eye on it.
There's another option under discussions if you get back in there. One that I just started using actually last semester. Crystal, when you have when you want a student to post an original thought before they actually get to see someone else's post and what they've said, there is a new setting within Blackboard. It's a fairly recent addition to Blackboard where you can make that change. So it's right there, as Jackie has shown you under forum settings. Participants must create a thread in order to view other threads in the forum. So what it does is they have to post something, and they can't delete it. So for those that want to jump in there and then delete it to see what everybody said, it doesn't work that way. Once they post, it's locked in. So I don't do that for every single forum. I don't do that for everyone, but for those ones where I want them to create an original thought before they regurgitate somebody else's post, they might reword somebody else's post or say I agree or whatever. This forces them to kind of create their own original thought before they can see and reflect on others. So at that point, once they posted their original thought, then they can go back in and reply to classmates. And some of them may have the same answers or similar answers, but then that's okay.
But at least you know it's their work.
And there's obviously ways to get around that if they wanted to get information outside of the form, but I'm not real concerned about that.
Yeah. So you're talking about your class outside of class? Good. So, yeah, so that's a really interesting feature. I've had classes where instructors use it all the time, and it's in a class where everybody's doing great, and that wouldn't be an issue anyway. And then in other classes where that is an issue, they're not using it.
Well, sometimes I want to see the responses and everything else before they make their posts. And I know students get a lot of anxiety about being the first one to post. So I don't use it all the time, but for those ones, in certain forms, I think it's appropriate, at least in my class.
Yeah. And then, okay, let's go ahead and look at the grade test. Okay, we do have some color coding applied. It's under the Manage menu, which has all those interesting little features that are so helpful that nobody uses. And color codes is about I'd say the most sort of simplest, easiest thing to enable in your Grade Center that makes the biggest impact. And as you can see here, we have 2 rule set, and you can delete those and you can add more. We're simply setting more than, or equal to, less than, or between. So it's just a range of scores, 5%, and then we set the color of the background, and you can set the color of the text. So you could do one or the other, or you could change both of them, make them real crazy, but it just depends on what your eyes want to see. So what we have here is if it's more than 85%, it's green. If it's less than 65%, it's red. So when we go into Grade Center, we'll see some greens because it's over the 85% spot, and we'll see some reds that are below the 65% threshold. And that sort of just gives you a quick, at a glance, like, is anybody in trouble on anything? And you can put it; it'll apply to the entire Grade Center, so it's not specific to one column or just your total. It's all over the place. So a lot of instructors are using it, and they're finding it really, really helpful. I mean, quickly glance just where are the trouble spots. So it's a useful tool that a lot of people don't really know about, but it's helpful.
I think it's good too. And just if you wanted to send an email to all of the students that maybe are struggling, or even send an email to all of the students that did well on a particular assignment, you can just visually be able to click those boxes next to their name and compose an email to them, either rewarding them or giving them maybe a nudge or some suggestions for further help. So I use it in my course. I basically flag all the zeros, will show in red. And when you're looking at a sea of numbers, it's easy to pull out, who's missing what at a glance. I know that Matt, college director, he uses it more of a heat map. He kind of has a varying scale of colors that he uses based on scores. And when you look at the whole Grade Center, he said it was a little overwhelming at first, that with everything colored, it kind of shows you those red areas and the yellow to the green areas. Kind of gives you an indication of who's struggling and what they're struggling with and where. So it can be a useful tool.
Yeah. And then if you did really a complex array of different colors in a broad range of ranges, then you could see, like, if you had like a whole lot of orange and red stuff in one particular column, something's going on with that assignment, or everybody's having trouble with it. So it's a useful tool, and you could use it in a lot of different ways, but pretty simple for something that can give you so much information. So it was difficult for me to look at first. It's not clean. Some of them are only like that. Visually it bothers me, but that's kind of the point of it. So okay, we'll look at the calendar. Now, one of the things that a lot of instructors misunderstand about the calendar is what students see. Students don't see the same calendars that you see. every user sees the calendars for the courses that they're enrolled in. So right now I see a bunch of courses that I enrolled in for whatever miscellaneous support reasons. I see demo courses that I'm in. I see courses that I'm facilitating, but I don't see your courses unless one of those is your courses. And you wouldn't see the courses that I'm in. And students, they see their courses and only their courses, so they're not going to see all your other sections. So if you put something on the calendar in one section, it's not going to appear for all your other students. You have to put it on each individual calendar. So a lot of times that can be kind of time intensive, but the due date settings on tests and assignments and grades, there's anything that is a graded item in Blackboard, if you set the due date, and that's not the availability range, that's the due date, then it will appear automatically on the calendar. So we see that this is an actual graded item, and you can tell because they have these little check mark indicators, and that means it's a graded item. So you can actually change the calendar. Well, I can't. You can edit the item from there and grade the item from there. So, I mean, if you use the calendar a lot, you could use it to access things that you would normally navigate elsewhere in the course. So that could be kind of convenient. You can change the date here, and it will change the due date on the item. If you change the date on the item, it will change where it's located on the calendar. So those things sync, and they link together. So if you change one, you're changing both of them within that same course, not the other section. So if you did notice that you have, say you had 3 different sections, and you noticed, oh, they should all have the due date here, but one of them is a day off, you can just drag and drop those. So I'm going to not do that on this other person's course, but you can create items on the calendar, and these are just calendar events. So they're not actual grade items. So if you put a due, like such and such assignment due in a calendar event, that's not tied to the due date on the item. It's not connected to it in any way. So if it's an item that's a graded item in Blackboard, you want to set the due date on the item, and then it will show up on the calendar automatically. But it's a good place to put things like start working on this, or if you have your proctored event over a week, you can put, proctoring days over the entire span of the proctoring time, and then put the due date on the last day possible. So, but due dates are kind of going to be a thing. There's some reporting that we're doing campus-wide that are, it's automatically on there. There's some reporting that's going to be done campus-wide, and it's dependent on due dates. So due dates are kind of going to be a thing. So just, if you're using due dates, and that's fantastic. Those. Also, when you do your initial course setup and you have to change all the due dates, it can be helpful because when you go to the calendar, if you're off by a day, you don't have to go back into lesson whatever and open the item and edit it and change the due date. You can just see it there, oh, that belongs here, and just drag and drop it. So for small corrections, it's really great.
Crystal, do you have the calendar turned on in the course currently? You're using due dates, but you don't necessarily have to have the calendar.
The calendar link
to use due dates. Okay. Yeah, but Jackie, as she mentioned, we're going to probably start. We have been kind of lax on kind of enforcing due dates in the courses, just because everybody does it a little bit differently. Either provide a schedule and refer students to a schedule or a PDF in their course. Honestly, I wasn't using due dates for assignments in my course until recently. But we're going to start probably recommending that because we're looking at a tool for spring called Inspire EDU that does retention tracking, and it will identify the most at-risk students in each course across the institution. It'll kind of compile all the students based on their risk score, and part of that risk score is dependent on the due dates being set in the course. So for that tool to work, we have to have it. But it's also good because the due dates are going to be, students get notifications if they have that turned on in the Blackboard course, if you're using due dates, it's just a good practice in general. I think that, one of the new features of Blackboard and a newer version of Blackboard, whenever we do course copies, the new feature of the next version of Blackboard will automatically adjust dates for us, supposedly. Don't know how that works yet, but it'll try to best guess, based on the dates you have set for the next semester, where you want those dates to be. So,
and that's when the drag and drop will come in handy, because it's going to calculate based on, like, say your first assignment was due 5 days from the start of the last semester, and it knows what dates our semester ranges are, so it'll just move that due date 5 days after the start of the next semester, so which could be close, but might not be exactly where you want it to be, but then you can just drag and drop them. So it gets you at least partway there,
right,
which is really helpful, because right now we don't have that, and so you can only drag like within a month, so you would have to go back to the items, change the due date, then drag on the calendar if you're off a little bit. So it's going to be really helpful when we switch, but
I don't know when we're switching yet, but
hopefully
something to look forward to.
Yeah.
Probably summer next year, when we'll switch.
Yeah. And you can always scroll all the way back and then just open the item and change the date there, so that you can get to all of them and not have to go into a lesson, edit an item, change a due date. So the calendar really is kind of a shortcut for a few things. So it's a good tool. And a lot of instructors take the link out of their course menu and think, well, I'm just not using it. I'm not going to put it in there. That way my students won't see it. Your students have access to the calendar in all of their courses and also through the global menu here. And that will show them your course's calendar whether you're using it or not. So if you're not using it, it'll just have nothing in it. And if you're not using due dates, it'll have nothing in it. But they'll see it. So if they become reliant on items being in the calendar, to them it's going to look like there's nothing due in this class. So that could be a problem. We try to make students aware that they need to pay attention to what's in their course lesson content and in their syllabus and course schedule, and not rely solely on the calendar, but you know how students are. So calendars, due dates is a thing. Yeah, it is helpful. I don't rely on it as a student because I don't trust people to remember to put their due dates in, but it would be helpful to be like, okay, I can see what's going on. So once it's more implemented, I think.
I think it's a good practice to put dates in several places. The problem with that, obviously, as you probably know, is that there's more margin for error in getting a date wrong, you know, when you have multiple places to...
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to look at test questions, HotSpot questions specifically. Because nobody uses HotSpot questions hardly, and it would be really great in a lot of, there's a lot of different question types that are, some are more practical than others, but the HotSpot questions are really cool and would be great in the humanities, in allied health, all over the place, and people aren't using it. So, okay, so you type in your question. That's the thing that you're wanting your students to locate in the image, because they're all based on images. Let me see if I can find a picture that we can use. They need to find a nice picture. How about one of Jackie's crazy face? And next. And this is a ginormous image, which I believe we can resize it in later. Yeah, it's a ginormous image. I might need to mollify it. You know what? Let's pick a smaller picture. Hold on. Okay. This one's small. Okay. There we go. It's smaller. Okay, so you're going to start at the top left and just draw a circle. So, or draw a box around the correct image. And of course, there's 6 different right answers here. And you only pick one area. So for this particular question, this is an unfair question. So it's not the best of examples, but you can also give feedback. So if you were about an image from history, right, Crystal? Do you teach history? I think, Crystal? History? Okay. So if you were to... Yes, it is. If you were to add an image of a famous site, a famous landmark or something, and you wanted students to identify a particular part of it, like
the Lincoln Memorial.
The Lincoln Memorial, and have a collage of different memorials, and which one is Lincoln. Then you could draw a box around it, and you could also give feedback, like, remember Lincoln. You know, you can give feedback depending on where they're going, whether they select the correct area or not. So we'll go ahead and submit that, and this is what the question looks like to students, except for it doesn't have, obviously, the square giving them the answer. So let's go and deploy that test. I'll stop. Okay, so if we go through the preview mode of it, and we can see this is what the question looks like, and it was right there, and save and submit. And because we're not a student, we won't see the score, but that's the experience the student will have. They'll click on the image, on the picture. So that's just one question type that, yeah, math. History, math. Derps. Yeah, see, that would be a great feature for that, because a lot of times, like, I don't know, I used to do, like, color maps, like, you color, like, where this empire spans, like, where's the Roman Empire span, or where's the Ottoman Empire span. So you could use that, because you can't really, you know, I mean, you could do file type questions where students print out a map, color it, scan it, and load it in your test, but that would be a bit more involved. So a HotSpot question is great for that. Locate different cities on the map or things like that.
I guess if you're using it for a map, though, you probably want them or provide some instruction. Since you're only drawing a box around things, you're not going to be able to select, say, the whole state of Missouri. It's just going to be the box within the state of Missouri. So they probably need some instruction, I'm thinking, to click on the center of whatever area you're wanting to select, or something like that. So if they're clicking the edge of Missouri, it's probably not going to pick up that box, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you'd want to give them some direction as to, like, inside the area that was, you know, a little bit. And then you can look and see where they click, and they'll be able to see. You have the show corrected answers selected in the feedback settings. They'll see the image, and they'll see where their click was, and they'll see the box, so they can see if they were close or not. Yeah, it is cool, because then, you know, you'll get those students who are like, well, I was close, or I almost clicked on it, or that box doesn't quite cover the whole thing.
Yeah, then you can take a screenshot of that.
Yeah, you're very close. Sort of a pin the tail on the donkey situation. Right. So, okay. So I am really excited that you have ideas for how to use HotSpot questions, and I hope that you do, and then tell me about how awesome it was, because I've been trying to push people to use these HotSpot questions for 3 years. Because they're really helpful. There's really a lot of ways it can be applied, and I mean, that's a fairly cheater-proof question. You know, it's not A, B, C, or D. You have to know where, you know, whatever is. Okay, well, the study guide told me that too.
I like the interactive part of it. You know, I think students would like it. They like getting visual questions, things that require that interaction.
Okay. Okay. And I think that's everything that I have. Do you have any other little known facts about Blackboard?
Little known facts. Well, I do have one. I don't know. First of all, when you're laying out your lessons, I don't know, do you ever use the table to create, I don't know, just to line up your text with your images within a content area? Have you ever done that? Do you use a table at all, I guess, for laying out? Okay. Maybe I can show that.
Mm-hmm.
Something that I've started using more and more. You know, Blackboard's gotten a lot better.
The text editor.
The text editors made it a lot easier to line up text and images, but there's something that I learned not too long ago that's helpful for me. So whenever you're creating an area, we'll just call this test. And I want to put an image next to text. What I'll do first is I'll create a table. And, you know, if it's 2 columns, 2 rows, usually it's 2 columns. If I want an image, say, on the left side and my text on the right side, I'll make 2 columns, and then you can make however many rows you want. Let's just make 4 rows. I generally put it width of 800 because anything wider than that is going to be pretty much off the screen for whoever's looking at it. And then for a border, I don't want any border to show at all, so I'm going to knock that back down to 0. And then if you just want a white background, that's fine, but sometimes I like to put color in there for emphasis for the background. Then you can go to Advanced, and then you can do a border color if you have border, or you can do a background color. If you have the hex code for a color, you can put that in there, or you can just use this color picker, and we'll just make this kind of a light green. There we go. And there's the hex code right there. Hit apply, and then when you're ready, just hit insert. There's my 2 columns and 4 rows. This is where you can put in your images. So just select within the field where you want to go. Oh, one other thing. Whenever you select this, I'm going to go back in and edit this. I like to put some cell padding in there for my text. So cell padding basically is spacing away from the edge of the field, and I'll just generally go about 10. I'll update that. You can see now that it's spaced away from the edge of the field. So at this point, then I can go in and select my image. I'll just select Jackie's image again. We would generally put in our image description for accessibility, insert, and I'm going to just enlarge this. But this is what it looks like here. If you want to narrow it, you can, but this is where I could start typing.
What's the color area?
Then you can center, left, justify, whatever you want to. But what's nice about this, I can go to the next one, put another image down here. It aligns the text to that image, and so on and so forth. Generally, in my course design, I use these colored boxed areas for, I have a lesson, I'll give some instruction in the beginning. I might give them a reading, I might have them watch a video. And my colored box area I reserve for the what to do section. So students know when they see that colored box, they have to do all the stuff above it, and then what they're required to do is down below. And I usually put what to do up here, and then I'll list instructions, either bullet points or whatever I want to put in here. And then once you're done, you can hit submit. And this is kind of what it looks like. Now, I didn't fill in the rest of those down below, but you can see it kind of centered this to the image. From the student view, this is what the student's going to see as well. And I could add above this all my instructions, or I could make the whole thing color-coded. I color-code my modules so students know whether they're in discussions or whether they're in the modules. You know, the modules color-coded so they know where they are to give that extra navigation or sense of place, I guess. So that's just one thing that I've found that instructors like to be able to do, and it's a lot easier than trying to space and line up images within the content areas.
Oh, yeah. I use tables to align my images on the web, in Blackboard, everywhere, because it's easier. But I do it all. I use the HTML because.
Yeah, you kind of have to be careful with color too, just so it's not distracting. You know, it's just overwhelming. I don't particularly like this green color, so you have to kind of be careful with contrast and keep in mind students with.
You should show your thought.
Oh yeah, that's good. I think I remember the password. Well, this is my current course.
Old courses are all swanky.
So this is the what to do that I was talking about. It's a short bulleted list, and see it's just listed in blue what to do. It kind of gives students that real quick at a glance where to go and what to do, obviously. So it's going to show, I had a visual design course too. There it is. So this is one that I've used some kind of icons and other things with. But you can see the same thing applies there, what to do. Anyway, that's just one tip that I had that I've found a lot of instructors have found helpful.
And that's right too. All right, that's everything we've got. But do you have any questions about anything, or have you noticed anything in Blackboard that you always want to explain?
Or maybe you're doing something that we didn't show that you think other instructors might like to know.
Or that we might like to know, if we don't know.
Well, I'm sure we don't know something.
I don't know, I think at this point I've heard it all.
Well, Jackie knows everything. That's probably true.
I come across I still come across stuff there. I'm like, what is going on? It's usually broken, so
yeah.
That's not really stuff to know, but good.
Good.
That's what we're here for.
And I don't know if we mentioned it, but Innovation Showcase is coming up.
Yeah. If you want to share some of your inspiring ideas and practices.
No pressure at all.
Yeah. Although we will send you a cookie.
And if you know of anybody else, any other colleagues that you could coerce, twist their arms, or who we can coerce,
yeah.
Let us know. We hope to have if you find the email, we hope to be able to record the keynote presentation by Dr. Gordon. So we'll make that available to everybody at the end. Unfortunately, we're going to see if we can stream it. I don't know how well that's going to work. I don't know if our technology will allow it, but we're going to try to stream the presentation. But even if you can't make it, at least we can make it available to everybody after the fact. So yeah. We're looking forward to that. But we do have a link to the website. If you find the email and you want to click on the website, it gives you some more details about it and how your students actually can participate as well. We're going to have a Twitter scavenger hunt. We're going to be giving away a tablet, actually, for anybody that wants to put together an essay or a video about the day in their life. And it doesn't have to be just face-to-face students, online students also. So tell your students.
Yeah. Tell everybody. Tell them there's cookies. Anybody who participates and shows up, I will give cookies too.
Right.
So. But we know you're going to go be awesome and try all these new things. Just let us know how they work out, even if they're a total flop, because we need to know that too. So.
I just want to say thanks for showing up. You're one of our regular. I know you know we see you every once in a while, and honestly, it's more than we see a lot of our faculty. So for adjunct, we really appreciate you being here, and look forward to being part in the future.
Yeah.
Well, have a good day.
Later.